What is up, guys? Frosty Aussie here today for another Frosty Features. Today, we have our final member of our Thunderbolts team, and that is Songbird. So if you haven't been here before, what this is a comic book background on the tunes that you use in Marvel Strike Force, and I am your guide through the pages. And so with that, let us continue. According to Scopely. So typically what this is a blog post description that Scopely gives us on a character, and we read through it and we rate it at the end of the feature. For Songbird, like almost the entire Vigilante team, and every other character on the Thunderbolts team had descriptions, but Songbird did not. I couldn't find it. If there was one and I somehow missed it, hit me up in the comments, but I could not find it, so there's nothing here for me to read, so we're just gonna have to move on. Songbird, Our Lady in White. /pink. Name, Melissa Joan Gold. First appearance, Marvel 2-in-1 number 54, all the way back in 1979. This is one of the characters that I've done on Frosty Features. In all of the features we've done, this is episode 131. Out of all those characters, she is one of the oldest that is in the least amount of stuff, which is kind of crazy. Background, Shoshone, Wyoming. So for those of you who live in Wyoming and needed a superhero / supervillain to represent your I'm gonna say wonderful state. I've never been to Wyoming, but sure. Here we go. It is Melissa Joan Gold, or Songbird. Powers and abilities, sonic vocal projections. So she, we were gonna talk about it as we go through the notable events, her origins and things like that. But she is cybernetically enhanced to have enhanced vocals where she can scream and it's really loud and it hurts people, and then eventually she gets an upgrade, and eventually she gets another upgrade, and then another upgrade, and eventually she can use sound to create projections, right? So very similar to Dazzler creating light projection. Songbird does the same thing with sound. So all of the things she does are cybernetic implants that she can use sound to create constructs. So like Green Lantern, but with noise. Okay. Aliases! So, most notably, Songbird's main other alias is Screaming Mimi, but she does go by Mimi Schwartz as essentially a second personality that she has created. It's not quite to the point of like all the Marvel characters with DID, dissociative identity disorder, but there is Mimi Schwartz is a persona that she puts on to feel tougher, which I feel like kind of wears off as as the time has passed, but through a lot of her content, that is something she puts on to feel more confident and strong. Affiliations, AIM, SHIELD, Avengers, and the Grapplers. We're going to talk about I was trying to avoid Grapplers, but it's kind of hard to avoid. When it comes to Songbird specifically, we actually talked about Grapplers all the way back in Frosty Features Titania. So that was the last time we would have seen this. But it's hard to avoid, so here we are. So we've got AIM, which is when the Avengers took over AIM. SHIELD, we all know what that is, the Avengers, and Grapplers. Most notably, of course, is the Thunderbolts. So that's that. I didn't put it on there, but we'll say for the sake of this one that it's that goes without stating. So not only is she in Marvel Strike Force's Thunderbolts team, she is in almost every incarnation of Thunderbolts throughout the comics. Who died? Can't be a superhero or supervillain without somebody dying, and in this case, David Angar, right? Which is a bit of a stretch. She's already a supervillain by the time David Angar dies, but his death directly leads her to becoming a superhero over a supervillain, right? So for her becoming a supervillain, nobody actually dies to bring that on, but she suffers a very abusive childhood. And she has big abandonment issues, and she runs away, so she needs money, so she goes to a life of crime. So you could say nobody, but for her to become Songbird, absolutely David Angar had to die. Warden of the female portion of the raft. We're going to find as we get into notable events that Songbird has been in jail a lot, including going to the Vault, which is one of the super prisons. But as she becomes a superhero, there is a point where there's an iteration of the Thunderbolts team where she co-leads it with Luke Cage, and she and Luke Cage are wardens of the raft over the male and female, respectively, for each side. Destiny War Hero Revelation. So, the writers behind Marvel wanted Songbird, so she was a villain for a very long time. They wanted Songbird to be a hero so bad that they actually released it way before she actually became a hero. They did a version of the Avengers for Destiny War that are Avengers from different points in time and different dimensions, and this was the first time we see Songbird as a hero. So before her actual story arc of becoming a hero, we do see an alternate dimension of Songbird being a hero, which is pretty sick. Pretty cool little comic book fact. Relationships. So she has an unnamed father, and her mother is Mimi Schwartz Gold, which is where she actually derives that Mimi Schwartz other persona is by using the identity of her mother. Mike Brodsky, former lover. Abner Jenkins, former lover. It might actually be Jenkins, but I read that as Abner Jenkins because I live in Arkansas. And then of course Baron Helmut Zemo, right? Former lover. So she's got a lot of former lovers. We've got a troubled heroine / supervillain in its Marvel, so that's gonna happen. Notable events, origin. Let's get into it. Okay, so being born in Wyoming, we have a young girl struggling to find her place in the world, and mommy and daddy aren't exactly getting along. So mommy turns to she is kind of an alcoholic, kind of abandons the family, and then ends up going to jail for robbery. You're gonna find that everybody that's associated with Songbird ends up going to jail up until she's like actively in the Thunderbolts. Okay, so anyway, so mom and for robbery specifically, right? So mom gets taken away due to robbery, and she was running around with some other dude that helped her with the robbery, and dad gets pretty mad about that and feels his sense of abandonment. She's abandoned as a daughter, and then all of a sudden dad takes up drinking really hardcore and becomes abusive. So from this, she recognizes that this is not the way life should be. This isn't how she should have to live. So she decides to run away, but she's a child, and she's intimidated and very scared. So she creates a separate persona using her mother's name, kind of as homage to her mother, because her mother was that tough, whatever. So she starts going by the name of Mimi Schwartz. So anytime she is Marissa, she could be scared or whatever, and anytime that would happen, she would turn on the personality of Mimi Schwartz to be able to kind of harden herself and be that kind of, badass person she wants to be able to get through life. Through this, as a teenager on the run, she turns to crime to to survive. So she, like her mother, starts robbing banks and the like. So throughout this, she meets through the robbing places circuit, as the 1970s dictates. Through this, she meets a guy named Mike Brodsky, and with meeting Mike, he also robs things. They got on I like to rob things version of Twitter. We'll call it burglar babes. I don't know, burglar buds. Whatever. I'm making things up. Anyway, so she meets Mike Brodsky, and Mike Brodsky is also robbing. And so they form a romantic relationship, and lo and behold, the police get wind of Mike Brodsky, and they track him down. And turns out, when they find the evidence, it all happens to point toward Miss Marissa. So all of a sudden, we are looking at her going to jail. So her going to jail is what actually puts her on the road to becoming a supervillain. So she goes to jail, and while she is in when she's in jail, her cellmate's name is Marion Pounsky, who is a wrestler in this supervillain. It's a group of women that rob places, so they're not even quite supervillains yet, known as the grapplers. So in talking, she is convinced to join the grapplers, where she takes on this persona of one screaming Mimi. So the grapplers are a fairly unsuccessful group of robbers, and so they go out of their way to join the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, which we have talked about here on Frosty Features a few times, specifically with Titania. As you can see in the clip on the screen here, Titania is also a member of this troop. So this team is made up of Titania, Screaming Mimi, Pound Cakes, Marion Pouncy, and Letha. So with this, because they are getting into the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, this is a wrestling league. For those of you who don't remember from Frosty Features Titania all the way back, this is a wrestling league that is essentially wrestlers that have superpowers. So it is sponsored by the Roxxon Oil Corporation, which we dealt with heavily in Frosty Features Captain Britain. But Roxxon Oil Corporation is essentially a really bad business that controls a lot of things, and also hires mercenaries to do bidding to to help with their business ventures, right? Very legal stuff. So anyway, this is where Marissa gets to being she gets her vocal cords enhanced, and this is where she first gets her ability to make high-pitched screams or whatever that mentally mess people up. She can knock people out just by screaming. And so not only is she wrestling in this federation with the grapplers, but she also is enhanced now and doing mercenary work for the Roxxon Oil Corporation. And so eventually there's a run-in with a power broker. The grapplers aren't doing so hot, so the power broker also does additional enhancements to each of the girls to make them physically stronger, as well as, you know, them having their power enhancements or what have you. Eventually the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation goes down, and the Masters of Evil happen to be formed, and so Screaming Mimi at the time joins up with Helmut Zemo to join the Masters of Evil, and she runs with them for a while doing bad things, etc., which lands her into the vault, the Masters of Evil being in the game, run by Zemo, and superpowered villains go to super jail, super prisons, and one of them notably is the vault. So she ends up in the vault, and when she is in the vault, she meets another guy named Angar the Screamer. So Angar the Screamer has identical powers to her. They kind of form a bond, and after they escape the vault, and then they go on a robbing spree because they have similar powers, she develops feelings for him, but they aren't reciprocated, which kind of tears her up inside, but she's still running around with him. And has left the Masters of Evil at this point. Very much is cool in this. At a point, they do a robbery, and in this robbery, the police show up. It was an ambush, and they flee. And in fleeing, Angar did not realize that he was shot in the process. So they get out in the middle of the woods, and Angar ends up dying slowly in Screaming Mimi's arms, and so she begins to scream. Well, this scream was of absolute utter, agony and loss and what have you. So she screams for close to an hour. I think it was like 45 minutes. It's listed. I think it's 43. She screams, and everything around her is decimated. Right? She destroys. Spoiler alert for those of you who watch Frosty Features. She destroys a specific area around her fairly sufficiently just by screaming. She screams until she passes out and destroys her vocal cords, and she is found by none other than Helmut Zemo, who picks her up and brings her back to the Masters of Evil. So at this point in time, Zemo is trying to put together a new team of Masters of Evil to be able to kill the Avengers. That's his main goal. But then Onslaught shows up, and Onslaught kills supposedly most of the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, and a lot of the heroes are gone because Onslaught, right? In Marvel Strike Force, we talk about Onslaught all the time, and people are talking about leaks and all these things of Onslaught, even though it's not confirmed, but everybody in Marvel Strike Force wants Onslaught, right? If I'm gonna say that, Onslaught. Anyway, outside of that, so at this point, Zemo is joking around with another member of the Masters of Evil at the time, which is Beetle. And so Beetle is like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we became the heroes? And Zemo's like, that's a fantastic idea. What we'll do is we will rebrand ourselves. We will be the new heroes, and then maybe we'll get access to Avengers Mansion or the Fantastic Four complex. We'll be able to steal their data and sell it underground and make a whole bunch of money. And the other Masters of Evil are like, that's a fantastic idea. So at this point, the Masters of Evil were set up in such a way. Also, by the way, at this point we have kind of moved into our next bit, which this is the forming of the Thunderbolts. So this is the original. This is how the Thunderbolts first originally appear. So instead of the Masters of Evil, we are rebranding to the Thunderbolts. Our Masters of Evil team at the time is Zemo, the Fixer, Goliath, Screaming Mimi, Beetle, and Moonstone. So they need a complete revamp. They get new costumes, and they rebrand themselves from Masters of Evil to the Thunderbolts. So in this situation, Zemo becomes Citizen V, the Fixer becomes Techno, Goliath becomes Atlas, Screaming Mimi gets finally that name of Songbird. So from here on out, she's going to be Songbird. Of the characters on the Thunderbolts, as far as I'm aware, that's the only name that sticks from this original change. Beetle becomes Mach 1, and Moonstone becomes Meteorite for a short period of time, which we talked about in Frosty Features Moonstone, right? All the plugs. There's so many now that every single one of these is going to have multiple plugs. And we're just going to have to deal with that. We're just going to have to figure it out. Anyway, so the Thunderbolts becomes this team, and so they start off by attacking their old allies. So they start tracking down random groups like the Wrecking Crew and things like that, and being very conveniently in front of cameras. So the Thunderbolts are seen apprehending criminals on a societal scale, public, really pushing the publicity. Zemo setting all this stuff up, Master Strategist being able to do something like this very easily. So they are publicly taking down their old allies, but nobody knows that, right? They see new heroes, the Thunderbolts, taking down these old Masters of Evil allies, adjacent teams and things like that, and they are arresting them so that they can try to gain access to these different places. And eventually they actually do get access to the Fantastic Four complex and use that as their base. But eventually, as it goes on, there are a couple of things that the Thunderbolts does that actually could be considered heroic, including saving people from murderers. There's a point where Franklin Richards just recently came to the game. There's a point where they rescue Franklin Richards. And so these things start to kind of change the idea, the appeal of some of the people on the Thunderbolts. And so what happens here is eventually we get a situation where they are approached by a man named Dallas Riordan, who's a liaison to the New York City mayor's office. And so he starts, the reason why they start doing these outside, not Zemo planned gigs where they take down bad guys in a public way, they get these things from the mayor. Hey, this is happening. You need to come fix this, right? So they start doing these ones, and this is where they start to flip. They're like, oh crap, maybe I could actually be a hero. And the straw that broke the camel's back on this idea, because in Marvel Strike Force, we look at the Thunderbolts as heroes. Even the Thunderbolts movie kind of leans that way. The anti-hero hero thing, it's really big in the MCU currently. But the straw that broke the camel's back is a security guard is murdered at Micron Labs, and as it turns out, there was a witness, and they think it was Spider-Man that did the killing. So the mayor's office, Riordan sends the Thunderbolts and is like, yo, this guy was killed. You need to capture Spider-Man. So the Thunderbolts, attack Spider-Man, and he gets away or whatever. But Spider-Man is wicked intelligent, and he finds out that there is this group that likes to try to manipulate things from the background called the Enclave, and they created a robot to go and download information, and the robot is who killed the security guard and left in such a way that made people think it was Spider-Man trying to frame him. So he turns the Thunderbolts onto the Enclave, and the Enclave starts tracking them down, and as that happens, Spider-Man follows them, and then we have the big team up of the Enclave and Thunderbolts. And as they get there, what they find is the Enclave has created this thing called the Biomodem, which shuts down controls mentally all of the Thunderbolts except for Spider-Man and Mach 1. This includes Songbird, everybody. and Spider-Man and Mach 1 are able to, who is the Beetle, are able to, they, they join forces, etc., and they move to destroy the biomodem, destroying Robot, and forcing the Enclave's retreat. When saving Spider-Man, avenging this security guard's death, etc., Songbird and others decide that they would rather be heroes, and the plan to usurp Zemo comes into play, and they end up successfully doing that, making the Thunderbolts cross over into the more heroic side of the realm and allegiances alignment of Thunderbolts, which is cool. So yes. Power level! Marvel Strike Force doesn't care about power levels, but here on Frosty Features we do. Now, the way that this works, if you are a multiversal threat, that means you can end all of reality, not just your realities, toppling the multiverse at a whim. Universal means you can end your universe. Maybe I'll hop on over to another universe and end that one. Cosmic meaning that on the low end, you can take out something like a planetary body with enough time and effort, being able to take out things like solar systems or even galaxies. Nuclear means you have power equivalent to that of a nuclear bomb, taking things out like small cities up to the size of a planetary body with enough time and effort. Super Soldier means that you have powers beyond all human capability, being able to take out things like leveling a brick wall or a city block. City means you are equivalent to a human being that is trained to the absolute and utter peak of human ability. Now, this is very similar to our real-world Olympic athletes. In Marvel, we have a lot of ninjas, mercenaries, secret agents, and things like that at this level. And then there's Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian that is spawned by Hela in Marvel Strike Force, and without any additional help, no Undying team to back him up, Greg is not worth anything, and he is not tough at all. So due to undead Asgardian physiology, and just because I like to make the argument, I equate Greg to a regular human being. So in the event that Greg was a big fanboy of Songbird and decided that he's just going to start going on a robbing spree, and then all of a sudden he decides to rob my local comic book shop, and I'm sitting there going through the $1 bins because Frosty is cheap, and I'm out here looking for deals, and all of a sudden Greg busts in and he's like, nah, because he can't talk, right? So, which has made robbing really hard on him. So he runs in and he goes, rah, and he can't talk. Everybody's freaking out. And then all of a sudden, we all look over and Greg's just yelling and he starts slamming his sword on the counter. It gets stuck. He's just got nothing but fisticuffs left and a lot of yelling. And I, as the intrepid adventurer that I am, turn around and take on Greg hand-to-hand, mano-a-mano, and because I am a regular human being and all of a sudden he's playing regular human being games, I beat the crap out of Greg. I take him out. I take him down, right? Regular human being. Greg's gone. So that's where we're at. Greg is equivalent to that of a regular human being. And in the case of Songbird, I forgot to mention one thing. I didn't actually talk about her constructs, right? So her constructs come about after she joins the Thunderbolts. Baron Zemo has stolen a bunch of equipment from Claw and gives her last upgrade, which gives her the ability to make the aforementioned constructs with her voice. So not only is she able to level areas with just her voice before the ultimate upgrade she gets from Claw's tech, a Claw from Black Panther, by the way, she's even stronger from there. So her original level of strength is already nuclear, right? These constructs, in my opinion, haven't been explored enough to push her outside of that nuclear level, but she is nuclear level plus. So she's not bottom end nuclear, and those projections could theoretically be something that pushes her to the cosmic level, but I don't believe I've seen that personally in comic books yet. But let me know in the comments if you have seen that and read it, and that is something that you believe she's a cosmic level. And according to Scopely, if we don't have a description, we don't have a rating, right? So that's where we're at. We didn't get one. We got one for every member of the Thunderbolts except for Songbird, so that's interesting. But that is what it is. So with that, that is Frosty Features Songbird. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments your favorite Thunderbolts or your favorite Songbird moments. Or if I got anything wrong, I would love to hear from you. As a reminder, I stream on Sunday mornings, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, where we do Frosty Features Live, either on Twitch or YouTube. You can come hang out and check it out. I hope that you all enjoyed this. I hope that you all have a fantastic weekend. Most importantly, y'all, stay cool.